Okay, welcome everybody to our service dog handler chat. This is our talk about tasks day. And so today we're going to be um, having a more, I don't want to say controversial, but more opinionated talk about tasks because there's no kind of debate as to um, what laws are when it comes to tasks. That's kind of laid out there. We don't have that. And we all are in agreement that are here that our tasks are more, the law states a task must be trained, it mitigates the disability, must be trained. Um, After that, it gets really vague. So we have some panelists, and I'm not opposed with our regular handlers just popping in if they have something they want to add to. So I'll be asking a series of questions, and then if you want to answer, you can raise your hand. Whether you do that with the raise your hand icon or physically raise your hand, putting it in front of the camera, either or, that will help us refrain from talking over each other. Getting to where I can see my list of questions real quick. And so we're just going to kick it off with a nice, easy question. Some of you might be caught off guard on this one because it wasn't in our list of questions, but it's a nice, simple one. What is your favorite task to train? And then what is your least favorite task to train? And anybody who wants to answer, I'm going to go where I can switch. I'll tell you right away, like my favorite task to train, my all-out favorite task to train is retrieve. And that is because it fits so many disabilities. It's so fun to do with a game. And there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people that struggle with that task at any given moment in time, right? And then add in the fact that the task can be changed and tweaked in so many different ways to meet the needs. So, like, the possibilities are only limited by the imagination of us humans that are doing the training. Really. There are a few other limitations, like, we're obviously not going to ask our dog to retrieve something that's heavier than they are, right? So, I mean, there are some physical weight limitations, but other than that, the real only limitation is that aspect. So that is my all-time favorite one. I don't know that I have a least favorite. I have a couple that I find unethical. So I will maybe talk about those a little bit later. But otherwise, I don't have one. Ashlyn says in the comments, retrieval and door buttons are her favorite. It's funny you bring up the door buttons, Ashlyn, because I had not a service dog, just a pet in puppy class last night, but the owner had got the electric doorbells and could not get this dog to ring the doorbell at all. And so I grabbed my doorbell off the counter because mine has a magnet on it so I can stick it to my metal doors at the training center. I grabbed it off the counter and you mean, does it look like this? And I walked over and her puppy was touching it instantly. Right? She's like, why won't he do it at home? Because hers is on the wall and he knows he's not supposed to touch the wall. Mine was in my hand and he already knew hand targets. Right? So that little simple thing, right? Door buttons can be fun to teach too, as long as you know what you do. Um, so I see two hands right now. Go ahead, Ryan. Your favorite and your least favorite, if you have one.
Okay, I have to think about the least favorite. My favorite actually has been teaching her to do laundry just because she gets so excited and so happy and amped up about it. It's just been a really fun task to teach. And I guess my least favorite was probably teaching her to like she already had taught herself how to open the lever door handles and just kind of knows the door open, but teaching her to use the door pull uh,
Hmm.
just was a lot more complicated than I expected because she has to hold on to it and back up at the same time. And she's so used to being so gentle around me because of my disabilities that it was hard for me to get her to tug it hard enough and back up at the same time. She finally got it, but it was one of those that took a long time. And so that was a little bit, I tried to just stop and not get frustrated about it because it was just taking, but it just took months and months to teach her that what I thought was going to be a really simple task.
I had to do the same thing with the door pull too because Belle was slightly afraid of it because she was afraid the door was going to bang closed and she didn't like that noise. So that
Yeah,
one I had to back up and take a little bit slower as well. Christy, you there you are. Now you're unmuted.
Whoops. Try in here. Okay, sorry. I'm a bit scatterbrained today. Have I anyway, I'll tell you more later. But my favorite, I like teaching the retrieval and the touch. But my least favorite, I like doing it. The only downfall is with undressing, helping me undress. My
Uh-huh.
get ruined during the training process, or she takes off with it. I know
Right.
I
That
call
one does have some unique
it,
challenges to it.
yeah. So I know with Hodor, my previous dog, I have a lot of shirts with holes in them from the teeth. So,
Hmm.
but I still like teaching it. It's just that's the
It
downfall.
has some consequences.
Yeah.
All right. Um, serious?
Yeah. So, I mean, a little bit different from the dog trainer's perspective is my favorite tends to be the unique ones when, I'm working with someone we're training their service dog and they need something different are some of my favorite ones. Um, like I had a client who had narcolepsy and we had to figure out how to do a narcolepsy alert. So I really enjoy those like different, unique ones, or even like ones like medicine retrieval that aren't as frequent. I like doing some of those like fun ones that you have to kind of think about, like,
You have
how
to
do we
think
train
about.
this? You know?
I
Um,
feel you there.
um, my least favorite, I want to say, tends to be more of like guiding. Not like lead like to exit, those are okay, but like traditional guide dog tasks where,
Hmm.
the dog, is pulling, stop, responds because it's mostly because I don't have much experience with it and I'm always so worried that I don't want to do it wrong.
Right.
So I guess that's kind of from a slightly different perspective, like my most favorite and least favorite
Yeah,
kinds
I
to
could
train.
definitely see that because that's where I don't have experience either. Like, yeah, the whole sighted guide stuff, I do a little bit here and there, and I can brainstorm and figure out a way to teach whatever it is you want your dog to guide you to. But when it comes to not being able to see anything, and like I can
Hmm.
totally understand the teaching the dog the intelligent disobedience, such
Yeah.
as crossing the road, but the dog sees something coming and knows it's not safe. I can handle that part of it. Um, but that whole if you totally can't see anything, and
Hmm.
I think some of that also stems from like my dogs are medical alert dogs. So I know the amount of times, and since I specialize with scent-based medical alert training, I know a lot of times humans misread the dog very, very often. So to think about training those guide tasks, knowing that handler error is is there, right? the potential for handler error is there. Therefore, the potential for trainer error is even higher.
Yeah.
So totally feel you there. So I'm gonna pop the next question in the chat for anybody that needs to review it or think about it. So this next question is, how do you decide which tasks are best going to meet your disability or a specific disability of a client type thing? For those that are trainers, it's more of a like, what criteria are you using to determine what tasks are most needed? You know what I mean? I can say that when I started my journey, the medical alerts for my migraine alert was definitely like my biggest thing because at that point, my level of treatment was not very good. And my need for medicine as quickly as possible, because it took almost an hour for those meds to kick in, was huge. Now, flip the script to today's issues, and my medical, my migraines are much more treated medically. And the meds that I have to take kick in 5 minutes. So my first service dog alerted at like 45 minutes early, and now my current service dog only alerts at like 15 minutes early. Nothing about the dog, it's that the training changed because my disability changed. So when I'm looking at what tasks are going to best meet a disability, I'm not looking at like the overarching, all right, say A is your disability, so here's the tasks we train, 1, 2, 3, 4 for this one disability, right? It's more of, all right, what are you struggling with today or at this point in your life? What is hardest for you? And that's going to be important criteria for determining what tasks we're going to train. Go ahead, Sirius, you were first.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's along those lines of my favorite way when either working with clients or for myself is I like writing down like a list on paper, like here's how my disability or disabilities affect me. And I will also, at least for myself, I'll go through and kind of like write, okay, well, this one can be helped by a service dog, this one can't be, things like that. And then kind of
Awesome.
be like, and then prioritize kind of what you were saying. Actually, just for myself, I'm currently training my next service dog. He's 9 months old now.
Fun.
Um, yeah, oh yes. But and originally I was planning to train him for allergen detection, because I have a severe tree nut allergy, but I also just got diagnosed with MCAS, and just started treatment, and it's been helping. And there's also a concern of like, well, how much could I do the training safely for the tree nuts with how severe sometimes my reaction is?
Yeah.
And so I, this was, before we had like gone into, so I had been debating, like, does it even make sense? Like, my priority would be that allergen detection. But you know what? I
You
think,
almost need help with that though. If
yeah,
it's something you can't be around.
yeah. Well, and so and we had set it up like my wife was going to help me with the training and things. But there was concern about it, and we ended up deciding, you know what? Actually, let's go with migraine detection as like the main focus first. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it was a little bit of like priority with my disabilities, and then also a bit of, well, okay, but what works slash what is safe? Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Something I think I've done in the past sometimes is also like if people have, a long list of things they need help with, which is normal, sometimes saying like, well, maybe the first thing we'll prioritize is something that's quick to train. And then, while we're training some of these longer, harder things, we can get some quick stuff in to help at least some of the smalls.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it depends, but
I
like,
totally feel you there too,
yeah,
because like take retrieve may not be the number one task a person needs. However, we can teach retrieve at like 4 or 5 months old,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So there's no emotional component to it. You can make the dog absolutely love it. And you might expand that retrieve for the next few years, even because there's always new ways to do things and to change it up. But you can start it early, whereas some other tasks, no matter how important they are, you just can't start it super early.
Yeah.
So good, good. I liked that one. Go ahead, Ryan, you're next.
Well, for me, I had originally intended to teach Evelyn to do things to help. Uh, I'm a power wheelchair user, and so I drop things all the time, and I knew that I needed help picking those things up, and help with buttons and opening doors, and so originally I had a much shorter list of uh, tasks that I was planning on teaching, but then that just kind of grew. She started giving me medical alerts, and it took me a little while to figure out what she was alerting to, but as you know, she gives me three different types of medical alerts
Right.
because I have such a complex medical situation. And some of the tasks she just started doing. Like, I use my power wheelchair, 95% of the time, but within my bedroom, I'm able to take a few steps with a walker. And but sometimes I have disequilibrium and I get off balance. Sometimes I'll teeter backwards and fall. And uh, so she started when she would just hover right next to me and while I'm walking with the walker. And if I start to get off balance, then she would push me back the other direction to help me regain balance so that I don't hit the ground. And that wasn't something that I taught her, but something that she started doing. And another is like, I'm a ventilator user. And when Evelyn and I load onto the lift to take paratransit buses, the driver will fasten a belt behind us while going up the lift. And I have my ventilator attached on the back of my power wheelchair. And so sometimes when we're going forward into the bus, if the driver attached it to where it's underneath the hose that brings me air, that will just come, I'll lose my ability to breathe. It will unplug my breathing. And that happens in elevators that are too tight and crowded places. People might bump my ventilator and knock it loose. And Evelyn, when that happens, I don't have enough air to speak, so I can't ask a human for help. They don't understand what I need. And Evelyn started, when that happened, grabbing the loose end of the ventilator hose that's dangling near the ground behind me and handing it to me. And I'm able to reach back, and I am just able to reach to reattach it myself. And so that was like a task that she just started doing. And then other tasks, just participating in the Crazy to Calm task training group, like other tasks, I, expressed things that I was having trouble with, like, dropping things in places where she was so accomplished
Like
at
under the
retrieving
bed.
things, but things, to know which things that I needed her to retrieve when it's like between my bed and something else and it starts down there. And y'all suggested using a laser pointer, and that was, you know, just such a fabulous addition because I can use that in so many ways to direct her to get specific things, from cabinets and drawers and shelves and weird places that I drop things where it's hard for her to see what I'm asking for. And the same thing with like the laundry. Y'all suggested that, now that she knows how to do things with the laser pointer, it would be really easy to teach her to do laundry. And that's been such a blessing having her, be able to do that. And just last Friday at the task training, during the task training Zoom, I expressed that, sometimes she's like persistently telling me that I need to take my medication, but I need to eat food with that particular medication, and I just don't have the energy to get up and get food. And y'all suggested that I have a basket of food at her level that she could bring me something. And that would be really easy to teach her to do because she's so good at bringing me so many other things. So
Right.
it's just kind of evolved like that to this big long
Yeah.
list of tasks. And she's
So it's
actually
not specific criteria. It's almost naturally evolving based on what she's doing. That's so good. That'll lead to something else.
yeah, and based on what I actually need, like I need to breathe, and she's handing me like
We all need to breathe.
my lifeline and things like that, and it's just been
Nice.
so helpful to just be able to just add tasks as we go and as needs arise, and especially
Mhm.
having progressive neuromuscular disabilities where my needs are going to change over time. And so it's important to be able to continue adding tasks when I need them.
Yeah, that is really important. Go, or before I tell you, Christy, you'll be next if you want to get ready. I just want to talk a little bit about Ashlyn's because hers brings out a really good point too. So for her, it really does depend on like what environment because she is an ambulatory wheelchair user. Out in public, she almost always uses her power chair. Um, but the tasks that she needs in public are going to vary from the tasks she needs at home, right? Because she can walk with a walker at home, she needs a clear floor. So her dogs are trained to like clean up the room, go clean up the floor, pick up the toys, pick up whatever's there and put it where it belongs, right? Um, she doesn't necessarily need that out in public because there's not generally a whole lot on the floor. And her dogs are trained to retrieve something if she drops something out in public. But so the whole task looks different. So looking at that task as, or the list of tasks that you potentially want to train in the aspect of what do you need at home and what do you need out in public? Where are there overlaps? Where are they totally different? Yeah, that kind of thing. That is really, really important. In public, she also, she relies heavily on the help with doors and providing some counterbalance when she needs to stand up. And those are things that she just doesn't need help at home because at home she's got the doors set up, right? They built a house just to meet her needs, basically. So at home, she can open doors or ask the dogs to do it. But out in public, we all know how heavy those doors can be. And so she may need more help, especially if she's trying to walk with the walker versus in the chair. She can't manage the walker and pull the door open at the same time. So, kind of looking at how your disability changes from environment to environment be a great thing to look at when you're trying to decide what task to do. Christy, do you have something for helping you decide which tasks are best?
Well, it's been retrieval. I've been needing to work on retrieval and pick things up because of, everything that's happened. And then, but now I'm having to hire a new caregiver to replace my son. And I'm going to have to start, you know, cracking down on the no jumping and then bringing her out for training, public access training, and the vehicle, the medical transfer.
Loading in and out. Yep, those
Yeah,
come down into the manners area,
that,
not
the,
necessarily tasks. I don't want to say they're tricks, but not necessarily tasks. Still
Yeah.
training we have to look forward to, but they don't mitigate our disability per se. I mean, having the dog go out in public does
Well, I
somewhat
trained at public.
impacts our disability, but
Yeah.
it's not a trained task per
Oh,
ADA, right?
well,
But
I
yeah,
think,
very good points.
yeah.
So I did post the next one in the chats, and this one is almost a stem from that. And it's so how do you decide if a task is ethical and or safe for your dog, for you included, and I'll start that out with the simple one of like um my first service dog very, very regularly would put heat and pressure on my neck to relieve migraine when I couldn't do anything but lay there. And I started to teach that to Azul when he was younger. And Azul is a husky. It was very apparent very early on. Like, could he do it? Yes, very easily. But he also was very uncomfortable and overheated really fast. So there wasn't any duration that he was ever going to be happy with. So I decided that that was a task that I would just remove from his task list and not ask him to do because to this day I can get him to do it if I needed him to, if I had that emergency. But 99.99999% of the time I'm going to find a different way to do it, right? Knowing that he doesn't like it. And I haven't made it a big focus for Belle, my now service dog, simply because I got so used to doing it with other ways. And the fast acting meds that I take now makes a huge difference as well. Um, Go ahead, Cirrus.
So I always first think of the physical tasks. So bracing, counterbalance, forward pull. Oh, which Ashley had said something in chat, actually.
Go ahead. I'll get
Okay.
into that one
Okay.
next.
Um, well, because it is relevant to what I was going to
Oh,
say
go
as
ahead.
well.
You can
Okay.
read it out. Go for it.
Oh, okay. So Ashley mentioned in chat that she uses the bracing task, always uses another stationary sturdy item along with her dog for the majority. So the majority of the weight is going through her legs and the other sturdy item, not on the dog. And that's kind of where my mind goes first is, our dogs are like their body, they're physically not designed for that like weight support. So making sure that, I mean, but that doesn't mean that, counterbalance isn't necessary for some people. So figuring out ways to make it safe for the dog. So not training mobility tasks before the dog is fully grown, before those growth plates are closed, making sure that you have like other like a cane as well as so you can use other things like your dog is helping but is not necessarily taking all of your weight. um
Mhm.
Things like that is making sure that we're considering our dog's physical health as well, like their physical abilities.
That's a big one for me too. And a
Yeah.
lot of people, I sometimes take flack for it because Belle does counterbalance and she is short. The difference being that Belle's counterbalance is never, ever, ever putting weight on her. It's always a pull strap, a soft handle that not even pulls up ever. It's usually slightly off to the side. Because for me, physically, it's like my whole world will kind of just teeter one direction and be off balance. And so it's kind of a mix of bracing and grounding at the same time, just by holding that handle. It keeps me from feeling like I'm tipping over, therefore, I stop tipping over. And so it kind of relies on the opposition reflex. If she feels me pulling off to the side, she leans the other way slightly. There's no like long-term potential side effects to that for her because it's not like nonstop always the same side. It's not one side getting weaker, or one side taking more stress. It's more of a balanced, we're working together as a team to keep us both as straight as possible. But in the event that, like, say my knee gives out and I do tend to lean a little bit more, that's when she's leaning the other way, and it's usually a few brief seconds because either my knee pops right back and I'm fine, or I'm sitting on the ground, right? It's one or the other. It's not a long-term thing.
Yeah.
So, kind of framing it that way. I think that makes a huge difference when we start looking at tasks, that it's not always a one right or wrong way to do it always. So many of us need tasks slightly different, and it might be ethical to train a task in one way. And I know you and I kind of talked about it a little bit ahead of time, so I'm just going to throw this one out there. The idea of the go get help task. Now, I have no problem with the go get help task as an at-home task. Like, my dogs have done that before, where when they were off leash on our property, and if something was happening to me and needed something, going to the door and barking, and my husband inside being trained to know that if he hears the dog barking outside like that, to come check on us, right?
Yep.
So in that particular situation, fine. But to do it out in public, to release the dog to say, go get help, for whether there's a family member in a store or a staff person in the store, it's like, that's not okay with me, because it's no one's in control of that dog while they're searching for that. And if you don't have a family member with you, how is the general public or whoever that dog finds supposed to know what to do? Right? They're not trained to help you medically.
Yep.
There is a lot of that buzz out there that says if you see a service dog ever alone, follow them, you know, but that's not enough. We know education doesn't necessarily work with the general public, nor should our dogs ever be telling somebody in the public what to do. So,
There's also, I mean, along those lines, there's also like if you sent your dog for help, what happens if they approach someone who's terrified of dogs or who's deathly allergic to dogs and you don't know, like you can't prevent that because you don't know. So it's definitely a safe for, and I always, because I've had, people ask me like, can we train this? And I'm like, listen, can we technically? Yes. Should we? No, because it's also not safe for your dog. What if your dog approaches someone and they decide to walk off with your dog? Like,
right.
like someone could attach a leash or grab your dog's leash and walk off with him. And like that's a problem, obviously. So like it's definitely there's a safety both of like the public and of your own dog to consider in those kinds of situations. Yeah.
Ash Ashlyn says her counterbalance is pulling up on the handle as well, which, yeah. Um, when I got all the flack about it when Belle was young, because she was actually doing her form of counterbalance since she was a year old, which is young for most people thinking counterbalance. When I started taking heat for it, we got right into the vet, and I showed him, this is what I want to do. Is this safe for her or not? And he's like, there's nothing wrong with that. It works well. If that helps you, great, do it. And because it is so light and so minor, so it really does depend. And it's almost like there isn't any one for sure way that works for everybody. But yeah, we have a few other tasks that we have ethical issues with, but versus talking about it, Christy was next with her hand raised up. So Christy, how do you decide if a task is ethical and or safe for you or your service dog?
Well, for me, I was going along with was it Siri? Yeah, a lot of
Serious.
serious. I thought she was shortening it for a nickname. I don't hear too well. I don't have my hearing aids in. But anyway, the same with that. And then for me also, like I I would like to teach later on the pull assist, or the where my driveway's very steep, to help me go up it if I'm walking. No way you can do it on my manual wheelchair. It's too, but again,
Mm-hmm.
I also have other equipment I use, so that's not going to go towards the whole dog using all of the weight. But it does
Mm-hmm.
concern me, or if the door is too heavy, I wouldn't want them to open the door. with their mouth. Like my clubhouse, the doors are way too heavy. There'd be no way I'd teach that, because they
Good.
could,
That's good thinking, and a lot of that will depend on like the dog itself and how
yeah,
strong their mouth and neck is and how heavy the door is, and so many different things there that determine whether it's safe or not safe. So very
yeah.
good point. Thank you.
And depending on
Um,
my weight or somebody's weight, they're not just pulling the wheelchair and me, it's heavier
mhm,
and
right,
it'd
totally.
not be good for them either.
All right. I want to make sure we get to one more question before the end, and I know some of us have to leave right away. So, Rayanne, do you have a way or something that you look for, is it safe? Is it ethical when it
For
comes to tasks?
me, well, like for me, I made the decision, even though like I'm definitely somebody who could use a little counterbalance, I decided that it wouldn't be ethical for me to do that because I wobble what my gait is wobbly for the few steps that I can take, but my muscles actually you lose nerve signal as I use them. So without any warning, sometimes my legs will just give out and I'll just, like splat fall to the ground. And then I also have autonomic dysfunction that causes me to my blood pressure will plummet and I'll just pass out. And so I wanted to make sure when I was training my service dog that she knew if I was actually falling to the ground that she should get out of the way and then help me after I'm on the ground and not try to
Not
get
stop the
under
fall.
me because I was just, like I'm not heavy. I only weigh 119 pounds and she's 59 pounds, but I don't ever want to hurt her. And so
Mhm.
I decided that that wouldn't be ethical. And, with like, she gets help at home. If I ask for help or if I'm unresponsive, she knows if my husband's home to go get him and get help.
Mhm.
But I made the choice that I would never ask her to do that when we're like at the hospital or anywhere else in public. And so right now we're training the IPP button because there are times, there have been times when I have needed help, but I'm not going to send her for help um, in a public place. And so that
Right.
gives an option for her to be able to call people on my contact list. And then the same things that Christy mentioned about the heavy doors. I just like she would like to help me with every single door. But if a door is too heavy, which a lot of doctors' offices doors are, I call the front desk and I ask them to come open it for me because I can't open heavy doors and I don't want her doing it for me.
Nice, nice. I do have a handler that has taught her dog to get in front and catch her when she falls. And what we're looking at is the difference and why it might be more ethical for her is that her dog is 130 pounds and she's lucky if she's 100, right? And she's of the shorter side too. So like really the dog is almost catching her in the upper stomach rib cage area when she slumps over. So, and her feet stay on the ground, and usually she still has a good majority of her weight on her feet as well. So, and I've seen her do it, and I've seen him step in front of her just before she actually falls, and he has no problem with it. He doesn't budge in any way, shape, or form. It's not like he's bearing any kind of weight and it's throwing him off balance. He knows it's coming and he's ready for it, and he can easily do the task. But I would worry about that task with a good majority of people, right? Because of the weight issues, the size of the
Yeah.
dog, the size of sometimes a task that I think isn't safe. Somebody shows me a way that it is safe. So being open-minded, I think, is really, really important. So Our big question of the day, and the one that was most important to me, we all know that if your disability is not um, visual, if it's not obvious, that public places can ask the two questions, is this a service dog needed for a disability? And what task is the dog trained to perform? And so what I'm curious and what I want to know is what is the way that you respond to that? Um, and yes, serious, I know you gotta leave, so I was gonna have you go first. Before I even give my answer, I'm gonna let you go.
Thanks. Um, so I definitely lean towards the side of as simple as possible. Oftentimes I will just give something like grounding and retrieval. Like, I'm not going to go in and even list every single task that my service dog does. I'm going to give a couple that have like English words that the average person doesn't necessarily know what that
Understands?
means, but at least they're words that like, but like I'm not going into my disabilities or anything. It'll just literally if someone asks me, what are the tasks your dog is trained to mitigate your disability? I will literally say grounding and retrieval. And that's it. And like I won't say anything further. So I
What about if
personally,
somebody follows up, like, what do you mean by grounding? Because
and
retrieve, I think everybody knows.
yeah, retrieve
But
is definitely most of the time. I don't think I've ever had anyone specifically ask me what is grounding. But I'll have them like try to question and I'll just say like, for my disabilities, that's private information. It helps like I tend to very much lean towards the side of private of I don't want to give you like I'm not required to give you any information about me except for very minimal. I'm going to give you the most minimal and kind of leave it there.
yeah,
Um
I agree with you for the most part. However, I am going to try to throw in an action that the dog is doing, right? So by grounding, what
that's
does the
fair.
dog do for grounding? So like for because my primary is medical alerts, right? So
Mm,
my response is going to be she does a nose nudge for one medical episode about to happen, and she'll bump me with her shoulder for a different medical issue that's about to happen, right? So it actually describes the dog's action in response to a medical need, but doesn't say anything about what the medical need is. And that's what
yeah,
I think of when you say grounding. Well, grounding could be a lot of different things. So does
it
that
could.
mean your dog might lay on top of you? Does that mean your dog may put a little bit of tension on the leash so that you have that tactical awareness of, what does grounding look like for you? Not that it would be specific to anything disability related, but I can see that being a potential simply because most people don't know what grounding is. Unless you've taken a class
Yes.
in like deep breathing and stuff to ground yourself, it's not a term that people are familiar with. That's why I would say, well, what if I give you a follow-up question?
No, yeah, and that's fair. And that's why I was trying to think, because I've definitely had follow-up questions. I don't think I've ever specifically been asked that. I think I probably would most likely follow up with something along the lines of, you know, if I would probably, again, keeping it more vague, if I'm having a medical episode, my dog would come into my lap to help ground me. Like, so
Hmm.
I'm still using the word to kind of so
Right.
they know like this is related to the thing you just asked about. It's not something unrelated. But it's still not giving, as you said, it's not giving any details about my personal um if and this has happened, of course, they're like, oh, well, why do you need grounding? Or um, you know, grounding because of what? And I'll be like, that's private information. Um
Exactly. Exactly, exactly. And I mean, that's kind of where it falls into. So many people think, well, they have to give so much up of their disability and they're uncomfortable about it. It's like, no, the reason the transportation forms ask what it is the task the dog does is because they want to be able to say, if somebody says that couldn't have been a service dog, I saw him jumping on their human. They want to be able to say, no, that dog jumps for a task. So describing that behavior that the dog does really answers all that they need to know. So if your dog is trained to say, do a bark alert to bring attention to you if you're passed out, right? That would be a reason you might hear a dog in the store. And it would be probably nice for to have at least one store staff to know, oh, if I hear a bark, somebody should go look for this dog, right? So little things like that that describe the behavior are the key for me. Rayanne, you had your hand up next. And serious, if you have to leave, leave whenever you need to. I know you got another thing going on.
I I've actually, because my disabilities are so visible and so blatantly obvious to anybody, like they can see from a mile away that I have, so much going on physically. Um, I have never been asked that question as an access question, but I'm asked it pretty frequently, like when I'm riding paratransit and the other passengers, or sometimes even the driver, has questions just out of like curiosity. But sometimes other
General
passengers will
conversation.
ask, and sometimes those other passengers are curious because they might want to get a service dog. And so then I kind of go into it more and give a whole lot more details. Sometimes in medical waiting areas too, especially at my neuromuscular neurologist's office. I'll have people strike up a conversation about it because they're in similar situations, disability wise, as I am, and they're wondering how my dog helps me. And I'll give more details in those situations. But I do like the answers that I've heard today for how to like shorten it when people are just being nosy, or or when they really shouldn't be
Right.
asking, but they don't know they shouldn't. I haven't encountered that
Or
yet.
if you're
So I
struggling to
will.
breathe and you
Yeah.
just want to get the quick answer and get away,
Sometimes I just don't have the energy to talk, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I physically can't. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're right.
But
Absolutely.
I'm with you. If I'm just killing time in a space and environment, I'm much more likely to give more detailed answers to someone who is genuinely curious. And I said this before, but like I try to go early if I say I'm going to a doctor's office or a hospital, a larger hospital that has guards. They all don't have them in our area. If I'm going to a larger hospital that has a security guard, I usually they're early to walk around and figure out where my appointment is, and I'll stop by the security guard's question and I will show off some tasks because A, it's that great way to practice in a public environment. It's a great way to, they're not asking me to do any of that. I'm volunteering. Hey, you want to see what this dog's trained to do? We're going to do some practice. Watch. And kind of open that up because I have time to kill. I want my dog to practice in environments. And both of my last two service dogs, anyways, they love to have a crowd watch. It reinforces the behavior for them. So if I have that time to kill and have that strength in those spoons, then yeah, I don't mind being more descriptive or giving an example. I'm just not going to do it to the gatekeeper that's asking me and not even probably asking the question in the right answer. Which brings us to Ashlyn's answer. And she had said too, and I agree with her, a lot of times the employees are usually unaware of either how to ask the question, or in her case, that if the disability is visible, they're not even supposed to ask. And so most employees aren't even aware of that exemption. So she does get asked, even though she shouldn't. And her general answer is retrieving dropped items or hitting door buttons. And then she just continues on with her day, not really stopping to give them the time of day. She does have cards too that can answer that question if she's struggling with talking. So she may also just hand out a card to answer the questions, right? Cindy, I saw you joined us and you had your hand raised. Do you want to answer the question as well?
Yeah, so generally speaking, we don't get asked, especially now, because Nick has his harness and I'm usually holding on to the harness, so it's pretty obvious. But I did have him one day with my scooter, and I was got up to do something to tell the gatekeeper that we were there, and I had the gatekeeper. He asked what my dog did, and I said, "Well, he retrieves for me." And apparently, because I was using standing up, even though he'd seen me in my scooter, apparently I wasn't disabled because retrieving was not an ADA approved task on their ADA approved task list, which ended up getting a nice little email sent to the company that he worked for that there is no ADA approved task list. Um, but generally, I will say that because retrieving does not give almost every disability. I actually can't think of a single disability that would not benefit from retrieving. And so I generally say retrieving. And generally, if they start to ask the question of, is this animal required because of a disability, I will answer the question with yes. And he is a service animal and he is trained to do retrieving as a task. I may say something else as a task as well. But generally, I will answer the second question while I'm answering the first one just to save everybody some extra time.
I like to do that too. It's throwing it out there. So before you ask, it's right here. Here's your answer. And then it allows me to actually answer and keep moving, like Ashlyn said. So I don't stop and talk to them to make it a 5-minute conversation. I can answer that and continue to walk and usually
There's,
get that answer out fast enough that, I might slow my pace a little bit to make sure I'm not walking out of his area. And I make it, to the point, like I don't care if every single person around us hears my answer because my answer isn't going to be give anything away, right? So
right.
I don't care if the other people walking through the door at the same time I'm being stopped to ask the questions, here's my answer. And they have, not that they have any right to have the answer, but my answer is phrased in a way that there's no reason that I don't want them to know any more than I want the security guard at the door to know, right? So
Right.
yeah, I'll say it plenty loud, not screaming it, not being obnoxious, but plenty loud enough that I can start answering it before I even get close to the security guard and finish it before I walk too far away from the other side without ever stopping. So we did ask quite a few questions about tasks, and I think we got a wide opinion. I want to throw in the the last thought is that anytime we're talking service dog task, we want to approach it from that message of compassion and understanding and support, because as we did discuss in this chat, lots of tasks are very dependent on the specific dog and the handler and how they need that task to be. It's not a one size fits all kind of world. And so you can't just say, well, counterbalance should never be done. Because it really depends, like, what is your definition of counterbalance? How are you using it? How does it impact your dog? What is the amount of strain that is putting on a dog? And all those things come into play. It's not a if or. So keeping that in mind when you're talking about tasks, either with other service dog handlers or maybe even family members that are asking, that you can be compassionate about the questions. You can be, the opposite of rude. And you can be understanding about it, but know that you don't have to reveal your disabilities any more than you want to reveal your disability. So I think that's kind of a fine line. And I tell all of my clients that I work with specifically for service dog work, it's like, don't ever hesitate to ask me a question about my disability because I will be 100% open with all of my clients because I need them to do the same so that I can help them with training tasks that are going to be best for them. So I want them to be as comfortable asking me questions about my disability as I want to be comfortable asking them questions about their disability. So that's different for clients though, right? Clients compared to people out in the store, like they're not asking because they have a disability. They're asking either because they want the excuse to not allow you access, or they're asking because they're curious and just want to know about your dog, or they want to say, oh, dogs can do that. Maybe they're dog lovers, but they're not asking because of their need. So I am more likely to be way more open with another disabled person. Well, good point, Rayanne. Another reason she's probably never asked is because so many people assume that her ventilator prevents her from speaking. And so they just assume she can't answer. Yeah, that's a good one. And that may happen. May impact it as they're like, oh, there's no saying, there's no denying that's got to be a real service dog. Which should be the case in Ashland's case as well, but when public places are not training their staff to ask the questions appropriately, we never know what we're walking into. So with that, unless anybody else has one last piece of advice for choosing tasks, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Last chance if you have something to say. All right.